Hi, this is Stacy with Gooseberry Bridge Farm, and I am in the garden in the morning trying to beat the heat. It's not working very well. Here I thought I would have shade till 10. It's 9:30 and the entire tomato and pea area is in the sun. But what I'm doing right now is picking peas because I didn't get a chance to do it last night, and the peas are still producing like crazy. These are the two rows that were direct seeded later, and they're a little smaller, produced a little later, but they're actually doing really well, probably because we haven't been that hot. Now it's hot, but this is the row of original peas. They have kind of collapsed in the rain and whatnot over the last few weeks. Here's the rest of this side of the garden. The peas, another thing about the peas is, which here's my basket I've been picking. I'm really just avoiding going out in the sun now, but the peas are doing really well. But this is one of my tomatoes that I interplanted with these really thick peas, and it's a cat here trying to trip me. It's all right. It's healthy, but compared to this plant, it's about 2 feet shorter. It's not doing as well, and there's another one on that side. They're hard to see because you can follow this line up. That's the tomato. With all the peas. Where the peas were thinner, basically the tomatoes are doing awesome. They are loving the interplanting, where with the peas being too thick, sorry, I was just weaving in these plants here. See if I can break it off on camera. Sometimes they break. Anyway, I'm just weaving them into the cattle panel. But my point there was, where the peas are a lot thicker, the tomatoes aren't thriving as much. And I assume it's because of shade, but it could be also just fighting for resources, like water and whatnot. But moral of the story is, next year I'm not going to plant them peas quite so thick around the tomatoes. And to try to help, you can see this one is cut off. The peas that kind of went over the tomatoes, I've cut them back. So there's like a big gap here. That was me just chopping back a few like 20, there's the cat again, pea plants a day, and trying to clear these plants. There's another one down there. So I guess the cat wants something. This is cotton candy. There's usually 3 cats in the garden with me if something needs to happen, like if the kids haven't fed them yet. But it is really warm. Sorry, it's hard to walk through the garden, pick peas, talk to a camera, and not trip on a cat. But the point of all this is that the peas are doing really well. The tomatoes are mostly doing well with the peas. Oh, and let me show you the onions. All right, so we also did this one row of tomatoes with onions, and that seems to be my favorite. If I could come up with another place to plant the peas, I think I would interplant onions and garlic with the tomatoes pretty exclusively. Because look at these onions. They're looking amazing. They're big compared to the onions we normally grow. And we normally grow onions, there you go, look at that one, it's huge, in their own bed by themselves, and this has just worked so much better. These onions are just so much healthier. So I think we're gonna do more of that next year and try to come up with someplace else to plant the peas. But if I can't come up with someplace else to plant them, I'm just going to keep doing this, but thinner. So the main thing that's thrown me off here is that the onions do so well, and the one thing you can't interplant with onions is, well, okay, two things, is peas. All right, I'm gonna go inside and do this later. This is stupid. So because our, this big tree in the background there, we have shade in the garden after about 5 o'clock in the evening. So it's worth it for me to just wait and work on it then, or I probably should have been out here earlier. In front of me are all these trees. That's to the east. So all those trees shade all of this in the earlier morning. I'm guessing that it's just early in the season. Normally I wouldn't be doing anything with the tomatoes this time of year, and I would have till 10 with the shade, but I think it's in the sun earlier because the sun is in a different position. And now Norman's barking. So I'm going to show you one more thing before I go in and continue this later. This is my strawberry bed. Just so you don't think that my entire garden looks pretty good. And I mean, and there's weeds in here, you can tell that, but some of that is basil too. There's some baby plants I put in there, but there's a lot of weeds in that row. The next row is not so bad. I'm not really sure why. Unless it's because I weeded one and didn't finish. I'm not sure. Anyway, but the strawberries, these were planted this year in this weed fabric. They're still there. You can see the strawberries over there. That's all strawberries. Then there's like a row here. That's a sycamore tree we've been fighting for about 6 years. It always comes back. But yeah, all this grass and stuff. We weeded the strawberries and weeded the strawberries as all this was coming up, and it just got ahead of us. It kept coming. The seed bank is intense, and we just planted the strawberries in existing holes where previous strawberries had died, and we're hoping that next year, if the strawberries can make it through this weed pressure and through the summer, which usually strawberries are pretty tough as long as we don't get a horrible drought and extreme heat again. We're gonna keep cutting back these weeds, but we can't pull them because when we pull the grasses, it's pulling the strawberry plants. So we don't wanna pull them at this point. So we're gonna try to let winter kill them, and most of them will seriously die back in the winter, this type of grass. Now, some of this stuff doesn't die back, but it does become easier to remove in the winter. And if we have to pull up a strawberry plant and replant it in March, that's less stressful in the plant than doing it in the summer heat. So we will clean all this out before spring, and hopefully the strawberries come back faster than all of this grass. I mean, they do come back faster, but hopefully they come back faster and big enough to shade out more of the weeds this year, because they were so tiny next year. Shade out more of the weeds next year. This year they were so tiny that they had a really hard time shading out anything. So now they're big. It's like, this is a horrible weed. I need to get all this out. But on the bright side, all this grass, let's see if I can find one. It makes like a really poofy seed head. Poofy is probably not the right word, and I don't see any because my son picked off the one that was here the other day. But part of the reason why this grass is so bad is because it was just in this area last year, this tall grass, and I let it grow because I was using it for my dried flower arrangements and wreaths. So I let it go to seed. This is another type of grass that is fun for drying, but it's like, this is the poofy thing I was talking about, but this is not, this kind of grass makes a big one. It's like this big around and that long. So on that note, I'll see you when it's cooler tonight. Okay, I'm back in the garden, a little more prepared for the heat now, and also it feels cooler even though it's 87 or whatever right now, because as you can see behind me, most of the garden is in the shade because it is 6 o'clock. So I'm just trying to do a little bit of maintenance. Ooh, string, that's what I need. I'm gonna have to tie up some of my like squash and cucumbers and things because they are falling. I'm also going to prune a few tomatoes just to show you how I do that, keeping up with how how they've gotten all bushy and messy because I haven't kept up. Also, in case anybody wonders what I'm trapping, because I've been asked before, I had these cages or live traps in here for something in the winter. We were trying to catch rabbits and we failed. But I am basically using them to hold up these bush tomatoes now, because two of them, these two, were kind of trying to lean and fall over, and these are determinate varieties, so I don't want to prune them. I do want them to stand up. They're the kind of tomato that really should be in a tomato cage, unlike regular indeterminate varieties that don't really do well in a cage. And they actually, I think I am going to prune them a bit because the lower leaves that are touching the ground are having some fungal issues on one of the plants. Let me show you what that looks like. Here you go. See those spots? That is bad news. So I'm probably going to cut off all the leaves with the spots on that tomato. I've also got those bush tomatoes in these two raised beds where they are doing a lot better job standing up. One there, there, and there. I don't know if they're standing up better because they grew more evenly, or if it's because of the plants around them. They're not like leaning on anything. This one's even got some tomatoes on it. Little bitty things right there. And it also has a little bit of that leaf fungus. So I'll probably just trim back some leaves, but leave all of the branches. All our bush beans are doing really well right now. They are starting to bloom here at the end. I actually tried to plant these so that they would start blooming on that end, and I used the days to maturity and whatnot to try to get them to start at that end and bloom and make beans at this end last, and it hasn't worked at all because we were right smack in the middle looking at tiny beans. But I'm not going to complain too much because tiny beans are cool. I forgot to pick peas last night. I never imagined that we would be picking this many peas every single day when I planted all these peas. It's hard to calculate and envision what is going to come from increased numbers. Like, you know, I planted 20 or 30 pea plants last year, and this year I planted a few hundred. You can do that math, you know, roughly in your head, but that doesn't mean it's going to be accurate. This year, last year, it was actually probably more like 40 plants. I was getting maybe this many peas a day at the very peak, and that only lasted a few days. These plants, even if I was only picking from 20 of them, I would be getting more than that because they have liked the weather a lot better, I think. They like cooler weather. We had a cooler late spring than we normally do. The heat is, and we had heat, but then it kind of like backed off and then came back again. And it's really kicking in now that it's actually summer, but I've still got these pretty healthy pea plants, and this has never happened before, but I'm not going to count on that for next year, was the point of all that. Another reason I know that this is not a normal year is I always plant my peas on a similar trellis, and they are all the way up there this year. Okay, I'm trying to keep this video short, so just a few other quick garden updates. Last time we looked at the squash and saw all of the crazy vine borers. So far they have not killed any of my plants. We've been spraying with BT and also picking eggs off of these plants. The squash bugs also aren't too bad. And all of these tubs are doing great. We've got our sunflower and bean tubs. I still need to get the grass out of this. I haven't done that. Anybody wants to come help, that'd be great. And those are chamomile seeds. So we're gonna have some interesting volunteers next year. But for now, we've got our sunflower tubs. This is the one where the birds ate everything because there were maggots in the tub because of the rabbit poop. I think that's what happened. I don't even know if I ever actually made a video about that, but it's coming back now. We've got our cucumber here that's growing. I replaced the tomato. Got a couple okra and a couple sweet potatoes. We'll see what they do. This tub was planted at the same time and didn't get all eaten up. Basil, sunflowers, there's a couple 3 peppers, 1 cucumber, and some beans. And then this is all coming along. These are our whole beans. So while we're here in the garden, I'm going to show you a couple ways that I know that my peas are kind of on their way out, even though they are still producing a ton of peas. And I'm going to be, what I've been doing is cutting down some here and there. Like I'll probably cut out this today because it's really shading this tomato. And I've also been doing that because the peas are starting to get powdery mildew. That's one way I can tell that they're nearing the end of what they can tolerate here. This is what they usually do though. See this one that's all yellow? It's a little bit green up top, but it doesn't look like the other plants. So usually that's what my peas look like when they are done for the year. So that one will be coming out, and there's a couple more like that down here. Here's one that's just starting to kind of yellow and look sad. It's a little wilted on the top, and it's also kind of right on top of this tomato, so it makes that decision to just call it really easy. I also don't really like having all these mildewy, powdery mildew plants right next to my tomatoes, even like touching the tomato leaves, but I'm telling myself that it's probably okay because the tomato plants are healthy and thriving, and they don't usually struggle with powdery mildew until they are stressed out and ready to be done. So I'm not going to pull all the peas at once. I'm just going to pull out to the plants that are in the way and the plants that look a bit stressed, which this whole first row is starting to look a bit stressed. Look down here. All that powdery mildew, yellowing on the leaves. They're starting to turn kind of brown and crunchy. There's another pea back here. And they're just kind of overcrowded and falling down. But I'm just pulling them out a little bit at a time and feeding them to our rabbits. It's like a real treat for them to get the pea pods and the healthier leaves. But and obviously our rabbits, we have a lot of rabbits, but they can't eat them all at once. Alright, this is today's pile for the rabbits. Still haven't made a dent in the peas. Oh, there's Teddy. What'd you find, buddy? Besides not an appropriate outfit for video. Tomatoes! He's been playing outside all day, haven't you, Teddy?
Yes.
Yes. A little dirty. But those are good. Go put them in the basket. Okay, Teddy also found cucumbers. These are our first cucumbers
Hey,
of the
Bentley.
season. Oh,
We got 2